All right, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to our regular meeting of the board for April 26th, 2021. If you could please turn off your cameras during the national anthem, and now please rise for the national anthem and acknowledgement.
We would like to acknowledge
that we are here today
on the traditional territory
of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation.
Nous tenons à reconnaître que
nous sommes sur le territoire traditionnel
des Mississaugas de la Première Nation de Credit.
Oh, Canada.
Thank you. Prior to the approval of the agenda this evening, I would like to take a moment and convey our deepest sympathies to the Vega family on the passing of their 13-year-old daughter, Emily, a student with the Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board. Our thoughts and prayers are with you as you mourn her loss. I would also like to acknowledge that the trustees are also at the table this evening, as they have been for all the meetings, and to facilitate them asking questions, we've requested that they place their question in the chat, and I will ask it for them and identify the trustee who has raised the question. Amendment to the agenda is as identified under the agenda updates for items 8.3a, 8.4, and 8.5. With those amended pieces to the agenda, I will now approve the amended agenda for this evening. Special presentations. There are no special presentations this evening. I have no conflict to declare on any agenda items this evening. And I'm now on item 3.1. Having read the minutes, I approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the board for March 23rd, 2021. There are no notices of motions or petitions this evening. And section 5 for recognition. 5.1, April 28th is designated as Administrative Professionals Day, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank all Peel administrative professionals for their diligence, their dedication, and their generous service, especially during these difficult times. 5.2, April is also Earth Month. The Peel District School Board recognizes the month of April as Earth Month. Earth Month includes the international celebration of Earth Day, which was celebrated on April 22nd, 2021. Initiated in 1970, this event has been considered the birth of the environmental movement. Each year, more than 6 million Canadians join 500 million people in over 180 countries in staging events and projects to address local environmental issues. Since 2009, the Peel District School Board has worked with Ontario Eco Schools to normalize environmental habits into the lives of staff and students. There are now 104 certified eco schools in the board. As we practice physical distancing in response to COVID-19, we encourage the Peel community to celebrate Earth Month by developing a deeper understanding of environmental issues and reducing their environmental footprint at home. 5.3, I would like to acknowledge all of our Peel IT support staff and media support services and show our appreciation for them. They have been rock solid in their ongoing response to a myriad of difficulties during this pandemic, and we are extremely grateful for all that you do. May 12th is Peel IT support staff and media support services appreciation day. Retirements. I would like to congratulate and thank the following members of our Peel family for their dedicated years of service and wish them well in their future endeavors. Elizabeth Ablett, Catherine Alton, Barbara Arnott, Nawal Yassif, Thorald Beckett, David Black, Jeanette Bogles, Heather Borthwick, Christy Burkhart, Diana Burns, Wanda Carvel, Maria Cavaco, William Cook, Michelle Donovan, Arlene De Silva, Gaindawadi Dial, Joan Erickson, Rick Felix, Lucy Greenhow, Patricia Hall, Susan Heyman, Ruth Hunt, Barbara Jensen, Jim Kinney, Ellen Laidlaw, Petra Lang, Kim Loader, Wendy Macri, Michelle McLean, Esther McClure, Jadwiga Marusa, John McLaughlin, Jean McMullen, Maria Med, Belinda Medeiros, Tina Middlebrook, Mike Morrison, Melanie Morrison, Diana Murrell, Susan Pepper, Anna Presta, Jacqueline Pritchard, Tulsi Raman, Wayne Rako, Michelle Reynolds, Sue Riddick, Carolyn Robson, Bibiana Rolston, Kristen Schwass, Andrea Seekin, Ion Stefanescu, Chandra Sutera, Gina Tioli, Anyana Tom, Linda Tung Zablonzi, Kimberly Vichik, Kieran Wall, Barbara Wiklowski, and Mary Zawiski. Thank you again to all of you for your many years of service to the Peel District School Board. Sikh Heritage Month is also celebrated in April. As part of its commitment to equity and inclusion, the Peel District School Board proudly recognizes and celebrates Sikh Heritage Month during the month of April. Ontario was the first province in Canada to declare the month of April as Sikh Heritage Month in 2013. During the month of April, Sikhs around the world commemorate Vaisakhi, which marks the establishment of the Khalsa Panth in 1699, a community of committed Sikhs who stand up against all forms of oppression. Sikhs have a long history in Canada, and throughout this month, the Peel District School Board celebrates and honors the significant contributions of Sikhs to all aspects of Canada. This year, in addition to COVID-19, many Sikh families are impacted by the farmers' protests taking place in India. With consideration to our commitment to anti-oppression, anti-racism, and equity in our efforts to promote student and staff well-being, we believe it is important to support our students and families as they navigate through these challenging global events. This month in particular, we encourage staff, students, families, and our communities to spend time learning about the rich heritage, history, culture, and contributions of Sikh communities and Sikh Canadians throughout the world. Moving on to item 6, there are no delegations this evening. Item 7, appointment of Peel District School Board student trustees for 2021-22. It is indeed my great pleasure to welcome Deepanwita Sen and Selena Zhao as our new student trustees. We are indeed delighted to have you on board and look forward to working with you, and I approve your appointment. If you could turn on your cameras so that we could see you, that would be awesome, and we'd love to applaud you for being with us. So again, thank you. Item number 8, reports from director and staff. 8.1, Director Russell Rollins.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Supervisor Rodriguez. I am pleased to present tonight's director's report. Schools throughout the district celebrated Sikh Heritage Month, and it's an opportunity to remember, celebrate, and educate about the history of Sikh Canadians and the important role they have played and continue to play in communities across Ontario and Canada. Today, the presence of Sikhs can be seen in every aspect of civic life in Canada, from volunteers to professionals, from sports fans to political leadership. And I had the pleasure of attending a few of these events and learned not only from the many presenters, but from our students. Through the leadership of Associate Director Grewal and Superintendents Gill and Aujala, we will be examining how to strategically continue to invest in the well-being of Sikh students in the Peel District School Board. The health and safety of our school communities continues to be our top priority as we navigate the complexities of the third wave of COVID-19. Over the course of the past year, we've asked all education workers to carry out a vital task on behalf of our community. As frontline staff, they've been devoted to ensuring student learning has continued throughout the pandemic while attending to students' well-being. Staff, students, and families have taken extraordinary efforts to change their routines and carry out collective actions to limit the spread of COVID-19 and to keep our communities safe. Peel Public Health and Peel staff continue to work together closely. We are pleased to welcome Associate Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Monica Howe, later in the agenda this evening. On April 16th, the Ministry of Education issued a direction to school boards, which stated that most students with special education needs would be learning remotely at home during the remote learning period, and that school boards should limit the number of special education staff on site. The ministry also advised school boards to engage in this process by seeking the advice and input of educators who work with students and families each and every day. Our foremost goal is to support all families in keeping students safe, especially during this third wave. And we have a commitment to also working with families of students with complex medical needs to ensure that they continue to be safe and learning throughout this phase of the pandemic. We learned a lot during the January remote learning period. Educators developed new strategies for supporting the learning of the majority of Peel students with complex special education needs. We're building on those strategies and employing them successfully now to support students learning at home, while understanding that there are a small number of students with complex special education needs for whom in-person learning is required. Last week, approximately 100 students attended school in person. We are steadfast in our resolve to collaborate with staff to maintain health and safety in classrooms and schools every day. The board reports for your consideration this evening have been presented using the new template, which was approved earlier this school year. Thank you to the many staff members who have contributed to the reports that comprise the agenda this evening. Tonight, the director's report will focus on 4 student-focused initiatives that have taken place in April. Most of these initiatives explicitly demonstrate the ways in which a commitment to equity is being taken up in schools with students. They are as follows: the launch of the Contemporary Black Studies course, the You Are Not Alone student conference, the Agents for Change Spring Break program, and Beyond Horizons, a Mayfield Arts production. I'd like to take a few minutes to celebrate a local innovation that I think we should all be incredibly proud of. A contemporary Black Studies course was newly developed by a cross-disciplinary team of teachers at Fletcher's Meadow Secondary School through consultation and collaboration with Black students and their caregivers. The course is aligned with the Ministry of Education's curriculum. And here's a brief synopsis of the course. The course explores contemporary Black culture in Canada through the lens of critical race theory, with a focus on studying the cultures and histories of the Caribbean, Africa, and Canada from the viewpoint of Black Canadians. Through a series of social justice action projects, students will develop research skills to foster an understanding of Black identity and culture within the Canadian context, and use this knowledge to create change, personally and collectively, to showcase Black excellence. This course is already filled for Quadmester 4 at Fletcher's Meadow, and the school has 2 more sections running in the fall. There are several Peel secondary schools, in addition to this one, who've committed to offering it next year, and we hope all secondary schools will offer this course option because of the valuable learning it offers to all of our students and aligns with ensuring that the lived experiences of students are integrated into our courses. The 2021 You Are Not Alone Student Conference continues to strengthen and improve relationships with the diverse communities the board serves, particularly the diverse Black, racialized, and Indigenous communities, as outlined in the Ministry of Education's review of the Peel District School Board. For educators and staff, the YANA conference supports an understanding of the experiences and barriers that these students face in our schools and communities, and to identify ways that the 2S LGBTQ+ inclusion work in schools can be intentionally anti-racist. The virtual learning events have provided opportunities for students to access meaningful resources that positively reflect voices and experiences of the 2S LGBTQ+ communities. Our sincere gratitude goes to the many staff who played a role in the success of this year's conference, and to Melanie Riley Case and Hiran Mistry, who were central to its development. While most staff were having a restful and well-deserved spring break, a group of dynamic educators were delivering the Agents for Social Change Spring Break pilot program entitled Preserving Our Legacies, Affirming Our Identities, and Ensuring Our Futures. It was a tremendous success. The program focused students in grades 3 to 10 who identify as African Black, Caribbean Black, and of the diaspora. Students were engaged in learning opportunities grounded in the rich history of Black and African people to become agents of social change. This work was done in partnership with the community to provide a collaborative dialogue and feedback to ensure that the program would be both responsive and authentic. When students see themselves reflected in the curriculum, they feel a sense of belonging and agency, which fosters engagement and supports academic outcomes. In addition to the Spring Break program, the program is currently being piloted as a Saturday program to be held over 6 Saturdays. It was developed by an amazing team of educators who were committed to its success. They are Melanie Riley Case, Natasha Henry, Hayden Atwell, Leon Barrett, Wendy Bennett, Carrie Ann Black, Raquel Brown, Sky Bowen, Tisha Elliott, Joan Linton Madre, Chantel Madre, Brian Puddicombe, Tanya Russell, Nicole Trotter, Stephen Walker, Lisa Hart, Raquel Walker, and Tina Zita. Thank you and congratulations. And lastly, I had the pleasure of watching Mayfield Secondary School students present Beyond the Horizon this past Friday, April 23rd in the evening. This was a virtual dance production performed by the graduating dancers of Mayfield Secondary School's Regional Arts Program. Each piece was choreographed, edited, filmed, and performed by these talented students. I want to take a moment to acknowledge Ms. Slager and Mrs. Rollo, who served as the co-directors of the production. I have great pride in and admiration for their performances. The dances conveyed a range of emotion and complex movements in various spaces. It was amazing watching these students express themselves through dance. I want to congratulate each and every student. It was an amazing production. The entire event went for an hour and a half and is well worth watching. We have a short clip to share with you today. This is the conclusion of my director's report. The media team will now show the video clip of Beyond the Horizon for us all to enjoy.
Thank you, Director Russell Rollins. Mayfield, as you know, is Trustee Cameron's school, and Trustee Cameron also had an opportunity to watch the amazing production and responded to the student leader and the principal at the showcase's conclusion with the request that they pass on congratulations and appreciation for their excellence and performance. So thanks for that as well, Trustee Cameron. Director Russell Rollins, just one question on your report. You spoke about the Sikh Heritage Month and some of the work that's been going on within schools. Question from Trustee Sohi was around if there's any steps that have been taken to prevent hate crimes, specifically speaking to the incident that occurred with the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's speaking engagement.
Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, yes. All of our productions that involve a number of students as well as special guests will be fully supported and planned with and through the collaboration of our IT team moving forward.
Great, thank you. And Trustee McDonald, Kathy McDonald's asking, what was the outcome of the investigation of the breach in security at the event? Is IT still working on that? Is that what you just alluded to?
Thank you very much. Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, that is an ongoing investigation.
Thanks, Director Russell Rollins. Moving on to 8.2, Dr. Howe, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening, and a warm welcome. I will turn it over to Director Russell Rollins to introduce you and have you provide some background.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Rodriguez. Throughout the pandemic, the Peel District School Board has been supported by a number of staff at the Peel Region Public Health. We enjoy a close and responsive relationship with all of the staff who have, throughout the pandemic, not only worked on the front lines to serve communities, but maintained a close relationship with school board staff in order to ensure that our health and safety protocols serve our students and our staff. I would like to welcome Dr. Monica Howe to say a few words, to tell us a little bit about the current situation and to speak to any additional information she would like to share. Welcome, Dr. Howe.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present to the Board of Trustees tonight. As Director Russell Rollins has mentioned, we have really appreciated the great partnership that we've had with the PDSB in terms of implementing and measures to help keep students and staff safe throughout this pandemic. We understand that it's quite a challenging time during this third wave, particularly today with the news of the 13-year-old student in Brampton who had a tragic death. Our hearts and best wishes certainly extend to her and her family at this very, very difficult time. And I know that this particular death has raised questions around the safety of and impact of COVID amongst children. And so part of my update tonight will be to highlight where we are in the pandemic, what our observations have been to date, particularly in this third wave on children, as well as discuss where we're at in vaccinations and the supports that we are giving to staff and students who are learning in person at this time in special education classes. So where we're at in the third wave at the moment is that based on our data from the past few days, we do believe that we are approaching a plateau within the pandemic as a result of several measures, including the stay-at-home order and restrictor pandemic measures, as well as an ongoing vaccination campaign. We are seeing predominance in the B117 variant, which was originally in the UK, which we know is more transmissible and has greater severity in terms of hospitalizations and deaths. We have also noted two other types of variants, B1351 originally from South Africa, as well as P1. And we understand in Ontario that a newly identified variant of interest from India has recently been identified, but has not yet reached a variant of concern. And that is all to say that we are working very hard with the supply that we have to vaccinate our community in Peel Region. We are currently at 24% approximately coverage of first doses at least, and a smaller proportion of second dose coverage within Peel. And we do anticipate that we will be getting more supply, particularly in the first week of May, and Peel being a hotspot, that we are hoping to also be able to benefit from a larger allocation of vaccine supply. That being said, specifically around special education, we were able to, in partnership with both the PDSB and Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Boards, host 2 pop-up special education vaccination clinics specifically for staff, so that they would have advanced access to vaccine prior to and during the first week of return to school. So last week, we were able to immunize over 300 special education staff. And this week, just on the weekend on Saturday, over 400 staff were vaccinated. And because we had such good uptake, and we believe through our fixed clinics as well, because we didn't fill our clinic in total on Saturday with special education staff, we were able to, on Friday, open it up to all staff who worked in hotspot schools with a special education class, even if they weren't currently teaching in person at this time. So the last note I'd like to talk about is what public health supports are in place for staff and students that are currently learning in schools in special education classes. We do have public health nurses that are still attending these schools on site to support infection prevention and control measures and provide reminders or tips. We've also held a series of 3 webinars with my colleague, Dr. Aliyah Sundarji, who is a pediatric emergency medicine physician at Sikh Kids Hospital, to be able to speak from her day-to-day experience of working directly with COVID-19 patients and techniques she's used with children and students with special needs. And lastly, from a testing perspective, we understand that students with special needs often face barriers to testing, and so we are working together with our school board partners and our Ontario Health Agency, who is the lead for testing in the region, to look for low barrier methods such as expansion of access to saliva testing for kids. So that concludes my summary of update on COVID-19, and I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Howe. A couple of questions. One from Trustee Benjamin. Question around, you spoke to the vaccination of teachers and staff. Is there any consideration for vaccination of high school students?
Yeah, so certainly high school students at this time. The only vaccine that is authorized for that particular age group, I believe, is Pfizer, which is 16 years of age and older. And we do know that there have been successful clinical trials in the US for younger age groups with these vaccines. However, they have not received the official authorization yet. That being said, we are following the provincial framework around prioritization, which is generally using an age-based approach, but also now a more hotspot essential worker approach. So while we anticipate that at some point those high school students will be able to access vaccine, it's unclear to me at this particular time where they would fit within that particular framework, and perhaps some may be earlier than others if they live in a hotspot area, for example. So we will certainly keep you posted once we have further information about that age group.
Another question from Trustee Benjamin was, in terms of, is the provincial government, or do you know if the provincial government is looking into any future, to plan out policies that might deal with issues that are currently being faced, physical, mental, emotional issues that are currently being faced by this generation of students?
At this time, I'm not aware of any provincial planning, but I do anticipate in the post-pandemic recovery phase that there will be a major focus on both mental and physical well-being. We know the toll of this pandemic has been enormous on everyone, particularly families directly impacted by COVID, but also by all students who have not been able none of us really have been able to live a normal year. So we, in our usual role, our school health nurses play a major role in mental health and well-being with Yes for Mental Health initiatives that we've been able to partner with PDSB in the past. And we do certainly hope to return to a bit of a normal and get back to those initiatives.
Thank you. And a final question from Trustee Benjamin has to deal with the ongoing guidelines that could be messaged for the 35 over age group to continue to follow strict guidelines even post-vaccination?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because although certainly your risk is much reduced with one dose of vaccine, you still need to follow all the 4 core behaviors. And I think while I'm not necessarily aware of anything regionally that we're doing at this time, I do think it's been heartening to see all the social media activity on Gen X and the AstraZeneca uptake. That I think that those type of peer influences are likely to be the strongest. So certainly we'll take your feedback back to our communications team.
Thank you for that. Question from Trustee Cameron. Is Peel likely to consider the use of the Canadian company Medicago, which has developed a plant-based vaccine for the COVID-19 virus, and the 2-dose vaccine uses virus-like particles, VLPs, grown from a tobacco shrub to confer immunity against the virus, and still in the late stage testing right now?
That's an excellent question, and I'm really impressed with the level of detail. I, to be honest, am not sure of all the where we're at in the pipeline, but there are rigorous Health Canada safety approvals in clinical trials that need to be completed prior to approval.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Howe. Thank you for your time. I know how busy you are during this crazy time, so really appreciate you being with us this evening. And again, thank you for your partnership with us and your ongoing efforts to keep us ahead of the game with all of it. And certainly the communication information has been amazing. So really thank you on behalf of us. And I know that you've heard that from the director as well. So with great appreciation for your time here this evening.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Moving on to 8.3 Ministry Review Directives, Directive 12, 8.3A, Director Russell Rollins.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Rodriguez. The report before you for consideration this evening outlines the steps taken to strengthen the Human Rights Office and the services it provides to the PDSB community. A responsive and impartial office with the staff capable of identifying all forms of discrimination, and notably those that were underreported or underresponded to in the past according to the review. They are anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, homophobia, and transphobia. It is critical in order for us to rebuild trust and engage in the cultural transformation required through the Ministry of Education's review of the Peel District School Board. The proposed staffing model was developed as part of a review of the Human Rights Office as mandated in Directive 12. Similarly, the model positions the Peel District School Board to respond to complaints locally rather than through other contexts and escalated complaints, which will benefit all of those involved in a complaint. I would now welcome our Acting Executive Lead of Human Rights, Jessica Jasudison, to offer any additional comments on this report.
Thank you, Colleen, and good evening, everyone. Good evening, Supervisor Rodriguez and trustees. Happy to be here. So just to contribute to what Colleen has already mentioned, there needs to be, I think, really a two-prong approach when it comes to human rights at PDSB, a strong proactive response, as well as a reliable, dependable, reactive response, speaking specifically to our ability to conduct investigations in a timely and transparent manner. Particularly when it comes to approach a proactive response, this report seeks to address our responsibilities under the code to prevent, first off, and also proactively address human rights. So the proposed staffing model speaks to having dedicated human rights professionals who can provide that support, provide that guidance, that consult to senior leadership, to school administrators who are working on the ground to address instances of discrimination and harassment based on the code at first instance, and to help respond to issues in a timely way. But also to address some of the concerning issues that were highlighted in the ministry's review when it came to the Human Rights Office at PDSB, our ability to respond confidently to complaints that are brought to our office, instill confidence and let PDSB staff and students know that they will be addressed in a timely manner. So, I think particularly at PDSB, as the second largest school board in the country, we do need a strong, reliable human rights office. The Human Rights Code infuses every single one of our laws in Ontario, and so it needs to also infuse every single one of our decisions with respect to staff and students as well. And so I think that's what the goal and the hope of the Human Rights Office is in creating and cultivating and sustaining a culture of human rights that permeates all levels and goes on to perpetuate that long after the minister's review. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Ms. Justice. Just a couple of questions. The first one from Trustee Green, Director Russell Rollins, is where is the Human Rights Office located?
Thank you. I would ask Executive Lead to answer that question, please.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Green. So we are located physically at CBO at the lower level there. Obviously, during COVID-19, things have been different, so we've been proceeding with our duties, our responsibilities virtually, and that has seemed to be working quite well, I think. But I would say it's open to staff and students to meet us wherever they're comfortable. Obviously, in COVID-19, we're doing that virtually. In a post-COVID-19 world, we may proceed doing that.
Follow up to that was from Trustee Green. Wouldn't it be best to have the location off-site where it's totally independent for transparency reasons?
And I think that was an issue that was raised. I think going forward, proceeding with our meetings with staff and students virtually has been a good option, I would say. I think even for staff and students who appreciate the comfort of their home in meeting with us as opposed to coming physically to an office. But I think that's certainly a worthwhile consideration.
From Trustee Kathy McDonald, on page 6 of the report, there is mention of an internal memo which will be eventually rolled out to the system. What about the message to the public? Secondly, on page 8, under legal implications, what about the board's legal obligation to ensure that trustees have a safe working environment?
So speaking about the internal memo, so that was circulated among senior leadership just as a preliminary rollout, I would say, to ensure that incidences and reports of code-based harassment and discrimination do start to be addressed in a central manner, in an institutionalized manner, so that incidents aren't being addressed in silos, and we could start to create a cohesive, consistent response. I would say that it would be rolled out to the public once it's rolled out more formally, and that's something that we're working on as we build out the Human Rights Office as well.
Thank you. And through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, I would add that until we have the staff that are capable of responding in a timely way to all of the requests that come through whatever mode or under whatever grounds, we are reluctant to roll it out publicly until we can meet the expectations. And that is why we are asking for increased staff. And I think that will give us the confidence that we will be able to interface with the public in a manner that really represents what we are trying to stand for in the Peel District School Board.
Thanks, appreciate that. Question from Trustee Marchand. How much and what kinds of training are going to our frontline administrators regarding this office?
Thank you. Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez. Right now, we are looking at the only staff person or the staff person who responds to all concerns coming forward from the PDSB community. And so we have not been able to focus directly on providing formal professional learning for principals. Executive Lead Jasudasan has provided training to superintendents, to our senior team. And so as the office expands, we will be better able to tailor professional learning to the various stakeholder groups and to individuals in different positions in the Peel District School Board.
Thank you. From Trustee McDonald, would adequate staffing allow for reports generated by this office to be given to the complainant for transparency's sake?
Thank you. I will ask Executive Lead Jasudasan to speak to that briefly, knowing that our next body of work is to review the policy and the operating procedures and to update them accordingly with best practice in human rights.
So yes, that's exactly right. One of the key things that we need to get done, as was noted in the ministry's review, is a review and update of Human Rights Policy 51 and the operating procedure, making it clear what our obligations are going to be with respect to all parties in an investigation. And part of that is certainly providing a substantive summary of any investigation report so that there's transparency in terms of the Human Rights Office's conduct with staff and students. The plan to inform students of their rights. So that's an excellent question, and mentioned in the board report that we provided. So we've proposed as a pilot project, I guess you could say, a student outreach coordinator to do specifically that, because our students are such a critical part of maintaining and sustaining human rights at PDSB, and it's been really encouraging, I'd say, to see. To hear about how students are often at the forefront of advocating for themselves and their peers to say, this thing happened in our learning environment, it's not right. So definitely the plan is to build that out, to instill that confidence in them, and to let them know that they have a place that they can come to should they have concerns.
Thanks, Executive Lead Jasudasan. Question for the Director Russell Rollins. In terms of the staffing of the office, can I assume that the gap between the transfer payment from the ministry and the actual cost to staff the office will be addressed in the budget?
Yes, a business case has been reviewed by our Executive Council and has been put forward for consideration during the budget development process.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Executive Lead Jasudasan, and thank you, Director Russell Rollins, for the detailed and robust report. Really appreciate that. With that, I am in receipt of this report, and I approve the proposed staffing model of the Human Rights Office as indicated in the report. Moving on to item number 8.3b. Directive 25, establishment of a centralized applicant tracking and file management system, update number 1, Director Russell Rollins.
Thank you, Supervisor Rodriguez. Directive number 25 sets out the foundation for the retention of hiring records and standardizes expectations for the retention of those records across the organization. This report, I think, is fairly straightforward with regards to the background collected by staff in establishing those new standards. And we would welcome any questions that you may have about this report.
Great, thank you for that. Got a couple, I think. One is, as part of the environmental scan, was there any consideration provided to looking at promising practices in top-of-class organizations?
Thank you, Supervisor Rodriguez. I would ask Executive Superintendent Shirley Ann Teal to answer that question, please.
Yes, thank you, Director Russell Rollins, and through you, Supervisor Rodriguez. I, in turn, am going to ask our Assistant Director of HR Operations, who conducted the environmental scan, Cynthia Obarmi-Tutur, to answer that question. Cynthia?
Thank you. Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, I would like to share that we did check the practices underway at several school boards, including Halton, Hamilton, Toronto District School Board, as well as the City of Toronto, the City and the City of Burlington, as exemplary public sector organizations to review their processes.
Thank you for that. Under next steps, you have that by the fall of 2021, you will have confirmation for trustees that a tracking system is in place. In terms of that, can I have the board recorder place in the pending items a report to be forthcoming on this for November 2021, please? If that meets with your timeline structure based on the report, would that be fine?
Certainly.
Thank you, Supervisor Rodriguez.
Yeah, Thank you again for the report. Really appreciate again the detail in the report. And with that, I am in receipt of this report. 8.4, Peel District School Board Policy 90, Hiring Practices. Director Russell Rollins.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Rodriguez. This is an important and significant report for the Peel District School Board. I am going to ask Shirley Ann Teal to introduce this report.
Thank you, Director Russell Rollins, and through you, Supervisor Rodriguez. The hiring practices, policies, and procedures responds to the finding of the ministry's review by acknowledging the importance of race, racism, and its impact on hiring at the Peel District School Board, and that employing an anti-racism, anti-Black racism, and anti-oppression framework to the hiring practices creates more equitable outcomes for students. With the release of Policy Program Memorandum 165, School Board Teacher Hiring Practices, the Ministry of Education, the Peel District School Board was provided with the direction that was required and the opportunity to develop a fair, consistent, and transparent hiring policy. Policy will also promote accountability and will provide for us an additional opportunity to develop operating procedures that will action the items listed and highlighted in the report. And I would now ask Associate Director Graywall to provide more detail around the policy as it relates to the ministry review, the directives, and the focus on equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Teal. So I'm going to identify and highlight within the policy key areas that speak specifically to our commitment to the principles of anti-racism and anti-oppression. So specifically looking at the purpose within the hiring policy, we have a process that we're talking about that's going to be fair and equitable and anti-racist and anti-oppressive, transparent, and I love the word actively accountable. We're obviously going to support the implementation of the Ministry of Education's PPM 165, which Superintendent Teal spoke to. But most importantly, our purpose in terms of a goal is to ensure that our workforce is reflective of the students and communities we serve, so that all students, regardless of their identity, can achieve student success and well-being. I'd like to take some time just to talk a little bit about definitions that are critical in this policy. The first one is around lived experiences, and that is an area that we're looking at for hiring. Specifically, lived experiences refer to the personal knowledge that an individual has gained through their experiences and interactions in the world. These lived experiences are shaped by a number of intersectional identities, including race, gender, sexual orientation, creed, to name a few. An individual's identity impacts how they experience the world and the various forms of oppression, including racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia. Having lived experiences that mirror the lived experiences of our students allows our educators to understand and validate the experiences of the communities and students that we serve. Understanding lived experiences can also serve as a means by which systemic gaps are identified and addressed to ensure equity and inclusion so that all barriers can be recognized and eliminated. So how do we value lived experiences in hiring? We must interrogate our understanding of the concept of merit. The concept of merit must be interpreted and applied in the hiring process through an equity-based, anti-racist, and anti-oppressive lens. Merit is often seen in traditional ways where professional qualifications and credentials and traditional work experiences and ways of knowing are weighed more than non-traditional notions of merit, and lived experience would be one of those. Staff involved in the hiring process will consider placing appropriate emphasis on all notions of merit as intended and set out in this policy, and give credit to and confer legitimacy upon job applicants with diverse intersectional identities and lived experiences. Lived experiences and intersectional identities of staff are important merit factors for hiring processes in order to meet the learning and the social and emotional needs of all students. Identifying and validating lived experiences and defining merit in this policy is what ensures that this hiring policy is centered around the principles of anti-oppression and anti-racism, and ultimately meeting the needs of the students that we serve within the PDSB. Thank you.
Thank you, AD Grewal. Thank you, Executive Superintendent Teal, and thank you, Director Russell Rollins. I have one question, and it simply relates to when I read the report, I recognized that there were operational procedures that were forthcoming. And so the question that I have is about the issue of nepotism and cronyism, and will that be addressed? I know that it could possibly be addressed in the operational procedures as to who may be part of the hiring process. However, do you believe there is need to address it up front as part of the body of the policy, specifically in the guiding principles?
Thank you. Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez. I would ask General Counsel Giselle Basanta to offer a comment, and then I would be happy to respond as well.
Thank you, Director Russell Rollins, and through you, Supervisor Rodriguez. I think that that issue can be dealt with in the operational policy. I also think that from your comments, they're well taken, and conflict of interest policy is also can be looked at and updated and cross-reference as we go through our policy review process. So those were the two comments that I would offer in response.
Thanks, Legal Counsel.
Thank you. Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, if you are open to us adding a guiding principle that relates to both of those concepts, we could do that and ensure that it is still filed by the date set out by the Ministry of Education.
Thanks, Director Russell Rollins. Appreciate that. Question from Trustee McDonald. Will there be an update of the targeted hiring initiative and an update on the last targeted recruitment initiative?
Thank you. I would ask Associate Director Grewal to respond.
Thank you. So through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, yes, we will be bringing an update at the next board meeting. We had an extensive research project that captured all of the learning and the data. So we will bring that to board at the end of May.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Associate Director Grewal. Thank you, Executive Superintendent Teal, General Counsel Basanta, and Director Russell Rollins for all of your work on this policy. And I am in receipt of this report and approve the Peel District School Board Policy 90, Hiring Practices, and direct the administration to develop an operating procedure to implement Policy 90. Moving on to 8.5, Proposed School Year Calendars 2021-2022, Director Russell Rollins.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Rodriguez. The report before you outlines the proposed school year calendar for the 2021-2022 school year, with the considerations that were taken into account in the development of this calendar. System Superintendent is online and willing to take any questions that you may have.
Great. Just two things. One is just a piece of clarity. The primary note for the 2 PD days at the beginning of the school year, the primary note are that there are 2 PD days at the beginning of the school year. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you, Director Russell Rollins, and through you, Chair. Yes, that is correct. There are 2 days dedicated, in particular, to focus on health and safety during the COVID pandemic.
Thank you, System Superintendent Van Hoyda.
Thank you. Yeah, and part of the change in terms of the update for the agenda this evening was the specific amount that was placed in the in the accessing of the PD day, the busing during the PD day situation, that was there was an error that was listed there. Is that consistent with what we've done in the past, or is that number raised because of something that is currently ongoing?
System Superintendent Van Hoyden.
Yes, so the information that got changed was an update in a figure in regards to costs for single-day transportation when we do not align with the Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board. That was an error that was made earlier in the Transportation Department and was rectified in this report.
Great. Thank you for that.
It is also consistent with what we've spent in the past.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Again, thank you for this, and I approve this report seeking ministry approval. Once that happens, I guess that's when we have the calendar to be true. So thank you again for all of your work on this.
Thank you.
Item 8.6, 2020-2021 COVID funding and expenditure. Director Russell Rollins.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Rodriguez. As you would know, the Peel District School Board, as well as school boards across Ontario, have benefited from additional grant funding from various levels of government. The report before you this evening, prepared by staff, outlines the grants that the Peel District School Board has received and details some of the expenditures under various line items. I would ask Associate Director Jaspal Gill to speak to this report.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Russell Rollins, and through you, Supervisor Rodriguez. The report provides an update on COVID-related funding as well as expenditures. Since the start of the school year, based on various funding announcements, our board has received an allocation of approximately $34.4 million in additional funding. The details of the various funding grants are included in the report. As of March 31st, the board has spent approximately $29 million related to COVID. Most of these expenses are covered by the ministry's additional funding, except approximately $8 million that needs to be covered by the board's operating or reserve funds. And these are mainly in the area of technology, student transportation, and cleaning supplies, where the board's actual expenditures exceeded the additional funding allocation. In March, the ministry announced further funding, and our board's allocation is just over $14 million based on this new announcement. So staff is in the process of reviewing the new grants to determine whether any of the expenses that had already incurred can be allocated against the new grants. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Associate Director Gill. A couple of questions. One, just in terms of what you just said, the first 29 plus the other 14 that just came back in March. Do I recall correctly, AD Gill, that when we approved a little while ago, that we were able to approve up to 2% of the total budget to support some of this work, and we did make that approval. Did we use those funds towards this particular work?
Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, you're correct. The ministry this year, in addition to the additional funding that the ministry has provided, they are also allowing the school boards to use 2% of their overall funding, budget to use for COVID-related expenditures. And for our board, that amount is roughly around $36 million, and that was approved by the board back in October. And currently, based on the expenditures, I mentioned that $8 million so far has not been covered through the ministry's additional funding. And if we have any operational savings throughout the year, we will use that operational savings to cover some of this $8 million. Otherwise, the $8 million will be covered through the board's reserve funds.
Great, thank you for that. And will this the additional $14 million, will that help offset that cost as well?
Yes, definitely. Actually, if you notice that there are a couple of areas where I'm just going through that. Yes. So if the one area where the additional funds that will be given, the work we have received from the ministry is in the area of technology, $6 million. And most of the amount in $8 million is actually to cover the additional technology that we as a board spent on to provide the devices to the students and staff. So definitely we will be using some of that $6 million to cover those expenses.
Thank you. Through the report, A.D. Gill, it seemed that a large portion of the funding has gone to staffing, whether it's teaching, administrative, custodial, and other. Would it be accurate to conclude that most of these funds towards staffing was to reduce class size and keep both remote learning and in-class learning to a manageable size?
Yeah, definitely. And the intent was actually, from the ministry's point of view, the intent was to make sure two things, that we are making sure that the class sizes are as per ministry funding, as well as to make sure that the boards continue to offer a brick and mortar education as well as online teaching as well. So more, but in our case, we did provide additional funding to hire more teachers to reduce our in-school class size. In fact, our in-school class sizes the numbers were lower than what the ministry has asked the boards from. Yeah.
And that was my final question, A.D. Gill, was to ensure that that we were under the ministry benchmark for all class size from K to 12.
Yeah, I mean, through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, I can confirm that not only that we were under the ministry, but in fact, in school classes, we were in fact our class sizes were lower than the ministry's guidelines.
And those would be class size averages, Supervisor Rodriguez.
You are correct.
It's also worthy to note that the remote learning model at the elementary level has consumed some of our additional resources in order to make that a viable model, as outlined by Associate Director Gill.
Great. Thank you, Director Russell Rollins. Question from Trustee Dakrub is just trying to kind of ascertain what the average class size is overall in PLR.
I don't, through you, Supervisor, I don't have the number, but what I can confirm is that when we were looking at providing additional staffing to schools, we definitely looked at the schools which were in areas where we had more occurrence of COVID cases, and we made sure that in those areas that we provided some additional teaching staff to lower the class size in those schools. But and it was different for lower grades, which was K to 3 as compared to 4 and 8. But I don't have the exact, what was our exact overall average class size for PO, and we can provide that information.
Appreciate that. Thank you, A.D. Gill. Thank you, Director Russell Rollins, and thank you for the report. And with that, I'm in receipt of this report for COVID funding and expenditures 2020-2021. Moving on to 8.7, 2021-22 budget development process. Director Russell Rollins.
Again, thank you very much, Supervisor Rodriguez. The staff continue and eagerly wait the release of the grant for student needs for the 2021-2022 school year, which will allow staff to expedite the budget planning for next year. I will turn it over to Associate Director Gill to introduce this report.
Thank you, Director Lawrence, and through you, Supervisor Rodriguez. Again, wanted to share with the board the budget development plan for 2021 and 22 school year. It is a comprehensive plan with input sought from all stakeholders. As outlined in the report, the process started in February with enrollment projections. As we know, most of the ministry funding as well as school staffing is based on enrollment. For any regional sources, the budget development process requires a business case mission outlining the ask, rationale, and aligned with the ministry directives and our board priorities. The budget development process will continue through the month of May, and the plan is to present a draft budget to the board at the June board meeting for approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, AD Gill. First questions from Trustee Dakrub. Will this process be entirely public, and will meetings be live streamed to ensure they're accessible to the public?
So definitely, I mean, of course, the last meeting where the draft budget will be presented to the board for approval. The June 16 meeting, definitely, as we have the other board meeting, that meeting will definitely be live. As far as and in addition to that, any of our budget development committee meetings, the minutes of those meetings will be presented to the physical planning and building committee once those meetings are happening, and then those minutes can also be made public, so that the public is aware of what is being discussed in the budget development committees. And even if the physical planning and building committee meetings are not happening for now, we will make sure that the minutes from the budget development committee meetings are public, and the public is aware of what is being discussed in those meetings.
Thanks, AD Gill. Another question from me is just it seems to be a fairly robust plan, and certainly dependent, as the director has already stated, on the timely release of the GSNs. Are there any contingency plans if this release was to be delayed significantly?
Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, and I think we will definitely will start with our budget development process. In fact, it has already been started, and as if you look at the plan, we have gone through the enrollment projections. We done the staffing in schools. The departments are already submitting their departmental budgets, and we are also in the process of collecting our business case proposals from various areas. So we will continue to move forward with our business development plan, and at some point, I'm hoping that the ministry will release the GSNs. And in fact, as of last week, we were made aware that the ministry, in fact, plans to release the GSNs this week. So I'm really hoping that sometime this week the GSNs will be released, and that we will have that information that we can include as part of our budget development process.
Thank you. And through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, just to build on Associate Director Gill's response, should the GSNs be delayed further and not released this week as anticipated, we would move forward with our budget planning with the assumption that it's a status quo budget and adjust our expenditures accordingly. And then as the GSNs are released, we'll do a gap analysis between the status quo planning and what is outlined in those grants for student needs.
Thank you, appreciate that. And final question from Trustee Dakrub. Will the discussions at trustee information sessions be public as well, and will there be minutes at that?
Through you, Supervisor Rodriguez, I will, in fact, leave that up to you and the board to decide, and whether. But this trustee info session, the intent of the trustee info session is not to make any decisions, simply to go over the draft budget and receive any input as we are finalizing the budget. So the intent is not to make any decisions. It's part of the trustee info session, simply to provide information to the trustees.
Thank you. And as Associate Director Gill has noted, we certainly are willing to work with you and the governance team. I recognize that our board bylaws, once enacted in the future, would have the Budget Development Committee, as well as any information sessions provided to trustees, fully open and transparent to the public. And so we are certainly open to having those discussions with you as to your disposition for this year, and to deviate from past practice so that we are
AG Gill for that. Thank you, Director Russell Rollins, for awesome. Thanks, Director Russell Rollins. Thanks, AD Gill. And with that, I am in receipt of this report as well. And then moving on to 8.8, which is resolution re-signing officers. This is simply part of the, turn it over to Director Russell Rollins. I believe this is a simple addition of the AD onto this particular signing authority.
Yes, Supervisor Rodriguez, it is. It is a update, a housekeeping matter.
Great, thanks so much. And so I'm in receipt of the recommendation and approve it for item 8.8. With that, moving on to items for receipt in 9. I am in receipt of items. I'll do this collectively in terms of minutes. I'm in receipt of items 9.1, 9.2 A and B, 9.3 A, B, C, and D. And thank you to the Peel District School Board Parent Involvement Committee's Annual Report 2019-2020. And I believe those are all of the reports for this evening. Thank you again for, before we sort of sign off, let it be noted that it was noted the template for the reports were robust and detailed, and they have a sort of a consistency about them. And so thank you so much for being able to provide that for us. Really appreciated being able to take a look at specifically the impact analysis and the risk assessment. So that was very helpful as well. So thank you for all of that detail. Really appreciate that. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Have a great evening, everybody, and take good care.